What's up, everyone? It's Mal here with Mike, enjoying the post Super Bowl NFT rug. Wishing
Oh,
we had a little bit more excitement around NFTs and the focus there, but today's interesting. It's been interesting just the last couple days actually, just to see kind of the positivity that has historically just permeated in this space is like kind of cooled off. The big examples are I was in a spaces yesterday with BT and Gala Games talking about that drop, and people were it felt bad for BT because like he was defending his art, which he should be doing, but a lot of people had concerns with 888. We don't have to get into any of that today. And then the Super Bowl, and then today, I think like there's just people coming after projects, and everyone was like, "Oh, the NFT space is so happy and joyous," and it is. But today, everyone's a little bit hungover and hangry.
yeah, I was just kind of catching up on the Discord because I haven't been in there as much, but because I've been heads down on the project. But yeah, the general vibe is a little bit more negative than I'm used to. Typically, everybody's in there it's just generally pretty hyped, but yeah, not so much today. Yeah, it definitely does kind of feel like a post Super Bowl letdown hangover. I was thinking though, like before the Super Bowl, everybody was like, maybe it's not good morning anymore, it's good afternoon. But now I'm thinking like, it's definitely still good morning, and it's still early. And even if you look at the Super Bowl ads, there was a couple of crypto ads, maybe I don't know, 10, maybe 15 at most. And crypto is what, 6 years or seven, 5 to 6 years like into the mainstream of people's minds. So it takes a lot of time for stuff to become actually a real thing across the populace. And it's easy to kind of be in the nifty echo chamber and start thinking that it's a bigger community than it is, especially when there's all this money coming into it and there's all this hype that keeps getting generated. But I think the Super Bowl kind of, for me, it was kind of more of a grounding point, which is that, yes, we are still early. We're still super duper early. There wasn't a single commercial that really mentioned Nifties. And yeah, there's for sure some conspiracy theories about why that might be. But I think
Facts.
any theory that can make a case for Nifties would be 100% applicable to crypto. So I think, um, so for me, they don't hold as much water since there were still crypto ads. But definitely, what I think is like we're we're still at the very beginning of this revolution, and that's totally okay, and no reason to beat yourselves up about it or to turn on everybody's turning on everybody. No need for any of that. Let's just all
No, I
try to
mean,
keep building a space.
I think some of the complaints are well founded. I think, look, like the space is like people are, if you're buying a project and it gets rugged and you lose money, like this is the big concern with like why we shifted our focus away from like talking as much about alpha is because like if you buy something knowing that it's going to go up but eventually you think it's going to go down, and then you have that hypothesis and then you sell it when it's up, that means that you sold someone else a bag, and that's they may never buy an NFT again. So like there is just a lot of that that's coming out. I think the other parts of it are like the mental health parts where we've been going hard for so long. I think everyone's a little bit fatigued. I think that everyone was hoping for the refreshing piece of more people coming into the space after the Super Bowl, and I think like that's not happening. You look at Looks Rare and the drops, the drop in that token. Like we're due for a pullback, right? Like you can't go up forever. So it's as long as it's healthy, I think we're in good shape. But for us, let's talk about something exciting. And it's not a secret to anybody that you did the Solidity work with some help from some people that on the new punks project. And yesterday, someone was able to claim almost 50 new punks, and it only cost them like $37. And that is, when you think about all of the complaints that people have about NFTs, a lot of them are about gas. And when you think about some of and you and I've talked about this offline about the challenges that you have with high gas fees and everything else, but this is a new realm. If this type of contract and the innovations that you did on 721a, some of the tweaks that you've done, it's incredibly impressive. So give us some background on this NOOBPUNKS contract that was put together.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I want to say is like there's an expression that people have used for a long time, which is standing on the shoulders of giants. And so before I kind of start talking about my approach, I just want to say like I'm definitely standing on the shoulders of giants. I didn't do this all by myself. Um, Back in over the summer, like 6 months ago, everybody was pretty much religiously using the Open Zeppelin implementations. You're either kind of more or less rolling your own implementation or using Open Zeppelin. I think there was one competitor, I don't remember who that was at this point because it's pretty niche to Open Zeppelin, but everybody's pretty much using those contracts. That was pretty much the state of the art for most of the fall. And then Pagsy Tech released their version of a contract for a couple different projects, but the Toy Boogers one was the first one that I was aware of, where they basically corrected what could be seen as an error or at least a weird decision in the Open Zeppelin contract. And I think what happened was um, because somebody cracked into that contract that everybody had kind of taken as gospel, it opened the door for people to kind of put it through a fine tooth comb and then think of other possible ways of doing things, which is really cool. So the first and the most prominent team to kind of really come out with an improvement over what Pagsy Tech had done was the Chiru Labs team with on the Azuki project when they released ERC-721a. So basically, what they did is they took the Pagsy approach, which is to eliminate a particular state reference, and then they kind of took it to the next level. So instead of
What's a state reference?
so basically in the original ERC 721 implementation from Open Zeppelin, I think what happened was they were kind of trying to create a standard approach to different ERC specifications. So whether it was 20 or 721 or 1155, consistent approach through there.
A feature set, a function
Yes.
set.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes. Well, what I was kind of getting to my point to answer your question, but basically they implemented a balance tracker that required access to the storage memory of a contract, which is very expensive. So that's what I meant, a state. So state of the contract. So basically, so yeah, I'm just trying to explain this for new people and experienced people. But anytime you make a function call to a contract, if it's references variables that are stored in the contract, then you have to do a much more expensive call than just using variables that are internal to the function that you called. So in more traditional programming, you might call that the contract state. So basically, the state of a contract is stored in what they call storage memory inside of these contracts. So in those original Open Zeppelin implementations, they were consistent. So they all consistently used that balances object to keep track of the balance of each owner who had called the contract to mint something or get a transfer. But that was actually ended up being really inefficient. So Pagsy just erased that. Well, what Azuki did is they basically kind of brought it back, and instead of erasing it, they kind of combined two things into kind of like a container variable, and still only access that one container variable, so they get a much more efficient contract, but they can open up more functionality by virtue of doing their access that way. And so then what they did is they kind of propagated that extra functionality throughout the entire ERC-721 implementation. So what they found is that by doing this approach, they can make a batch mint function, which ERC-721 didn't support ever through Open Zeppelin. So basically, you can mint. It no longer requires you to mint one token at a time in a loop. Now you can say, "Hey, give me a pack of 30 or 50 or 100." It's really, you could do the entire collection of 10,000 in one single call. So that's kind of the real innovation. So I would say them changing the packaging of their variables was not really a new novel idea. That was really Pagsley kind of should get credit for that piece. But them implementing that batch function, I think, is the real innovation magic of ERC-721a. One cool thing, so that's kind of the starting point. That was the state of the art back in January, and it's a fast moving space, or late December. Around when I kind of started working on NOOBPUNKS. So I kind of started with the original ERC-721a implementation and implemented most of NOOBPUNKS, and I just followed my just general coding practices that are good for Solidity. So like making sure you try to minimize custom functionality, stick it as close to the spec as possible, minimize any kind of calls to storage. So like what you don't want to do is use an efficient contract and then add a bunch of storage calls on top of it, because you'll just undo what they had done. So one of the things I introduced was a library called Boolean packing, which is in the Nifty Culture GitHub. So definitely go in there if you're interested. But basically what it does is it'll convert. So Booleans are really inefficiently stored in Solidity, but it'll you have two data types. You have your UINT 256s and then your Booleans. You can store 256 Booleans in one single UINT 256 variable. So my Boolean packing library just makes that conversion process easy for people who aren't really super familiar with bit shifting. So that was one thing I did in my contract. I always want to try to prioritize the common case. So like if you're going to be working on a project, talk to the people who you're working on the project with and try to figure out, are people generally going to be minting one single thing, or are they going to generally be minting two or more things? That's a really important question. So if you're doing something like MetaKey, is my favorite example of a situation where people are probably going to just mint one, because with a MetaKey, it doesn't matter whether you hold more than one, because you only need one in your wallet to get all the benefits. So the primary case for something like MetaKey is one mint. So would they benefit from a batch function as much? No. They could probably get away with just going with the Pagsley implementation. But with a lot of these PFP projects and a lot of other art projects, most people are going to, not most, but at least 50% of people are going to be minting in batches. And so that's where the ERC-721a really shines. So again, make sure I find out what we think the people who are interested in NOOBPUNKS are going to do. We decided it's probably more likely that they're going to mint in batches, and even Swag in the chat said he minted too. So that's just proof that it was the right decision. So focusing all of our work on making sure it was optimal for the batch case was kind of the next thing that I made sure I did.
Well, briefly, like that, it's like even if you just minted one, it's still insanely cheap compared to like what people are used to. Like it's
Very
funny
true.
because there was a small UI bug like for the free mint, right? And like we try to be as transparent as possible. And so it's the old, and I'm not a coder, but I majored in computer science for a brief time. But it's like, do you start at zero or start at one? And depending on like how that user experience is set up, like Well, if you start at 1 and the contract starts at 0, you're going to have one fewer, right? So some people
Hmm.
claimed free NFTs and they were off by 1. And it's funny because I was able to claim 7 NFTs in one transaction, and the ETH price was very, very, $30, $35. And then minting the one was like $35. Still insanely cheap. When you think about even minting one, it's just such an improvement in efficiency that we're seeing like that.
Hmm.
That's making, and this is funny because Sven and I talked about this, and we've joked about it before. Is that like you're going to be able to tell like the age of the contract by like the efficiency of secondary gas to sell it. Like if we could go back and remint the NFT culture token using this, of course we would, because
Hmm.
like when you look at some of the contracts that are out there, like if you buy an NFT and it's zero point 0.1 and it has the last generation, it's not that we were inefficient. It's like you use the last generation of contracts, the gas is going to be more expensive. And standing on the shoulders of giants, this generation is like a leap forward.
Hmm.
And when you think about there's two simultaneous things. Like one, how do we make NFTs more accessible? Well, gas is a big deterrent to the accessibility.
For sure.
Like this is really, really cool. Like I don't think people realize how big of a deal this is, in terms of people. I think people are going to have to ask themselves with these improvements, can I stay on L1? um, for gaming and stuff, I think you still eventually have to go to L2, but like a lot, there's no reason in my, and I'm an Ethereum maxi from an art on Ethereum perspective. And you and I joked about this yesterday, but like, is there any reason to mint one of ones or this art with this improvement to 721a, um, not on mainnet?
It's interesting because gas has been really cheap lately, like cheaper than
NFTs
I.
are dead. It's a scam.
Well, but here's the thing. So this is the really interesting thing that you have to think about is back in September, October, November, where Nifties were really blowing up and we were still using the original Open Zeppelin contract. So, like, if you had to mint out 10,000 Nifties, it was a huge amount of gas. And how many projects were dropping back then? Less than today, but a ton of projects. And many of them were selling out. But now you have still the same number of projects or possibly more. Granted, I don't know if they're selling out like they used to, but gas is still remaining low. And so I'm wondering if
Yeah,
it's
real quick, before you, sorry to cut you off. It's like there's two things. Like one is like, yeah, like today's slow. Yesterday was pretty high. Day before that was high. Like we're still relative to where we were, like when still moving on a bad day, 115 million
right.
OpenSea volume. My my theory is, and once again, I'm silly and don't know as much as you about this, but like a, a lot of contracts are starting to use this
Hmm.
721a, right?
Yep.
So like if hypothetically, like we say, oh, gas is low, so there's a couple different things that could be happening. One, no one's buying NFTs, right?
Could be that.
Two, people are very quickly moving to 721a, which if it's exponentially more efficient,
Hmm.
and the majority of new mints are being done incorporating elements of 721a, the congestion of the network that was causing the spike in gas prices drops across the board.
Exactly.
So momentum could be not as bad given some of these charts. Like, yeah, we're calling out today's hangover day from the Super Bowl. We're not going to get anywhere near where today could be hypothetically the worst day since January 21st, which sounds so
Yeah.
silly.
That's still a great day from a November October time frame, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, here the monthly volume, like we're already at Yeah, it's so if you think about the scale, we're halfway through the month in February, the shortest month of the year, and we're almost where we were last October,
Yeah.
which at the time would have been the fourth biggest month in the history of NFTs.
Hmm.
So yeah, like anyway, so I didn't mean to take you off that, but
No, but I
like,
think
is it
that's a,
possible?
yeah, I definitely think it is because if you think in like for people who did make it through CS for a while, you have your kind of O notation, which is a way to describe the efficiency of algorithms. And the holy grail is, of course, O1, so constant time. And then, reasonably performant stuff would be like ON, so it'd be like linear time. So if you think of the way the gas was back in October, it was effectively ON, so it's linear. So as you increase the number of tokens minting, you increase the gas price in a corresponding linear equation. What Azuki did was it turned the batch minting into O1, so basically a constant amount of gas. It's not quite constant, it does scale a little bit, so it might be kind of a flat curve. I mean, a very flat angled line. But if you just think of it in terms of relative, it's as close to O1 as you can get. So I think that to me is enough of a sea change where if everybody switched to ERC-721a, then you've drastically taken nifties out of that gas consumption equation. So it's very to me it's very plausible that the cheap gas we're seeing right now is a result of that. It would, I mean, maybe somebody will do some hard numbers and actually get conclusive evidence on that. It's really hard because like if you look at the tools that you're used to looking at for gas information, like the Etherscan chart, for the bad gas users, it's typically going to be big DeFi sites like Uniswap and then OpenSea at the top of it, and that's stuff that you know it's aggregated across tens of thousands of users, whereas most contracts are going to be so far down that graph that it's just hard to find them and hard to do an analysis on it. That
Yeah,
doesn't mean it's not possible.
but I do think like if we take it like over a sample set of over time, right? So like let's say OpenSea total volume stays relatively constant, or keeps going up, and gas usage, if OpenSea continues to fall off from that perspective, you could start measuring it, or like you
Hmm.
can start doing some spot checks, because we do find the stabilization of projects, right? Like, um, board apes still move a lot, but like they move a lot less than new minting, right? Like, and so
Hmm.
like, um, the activity curve for projects is probably very very high at the beginning and cools off and has variable spikes based on announcements and everything else. So with that, like if we over the next month continue to see healthy movement from OpenSea, but a continued drop in gas consumption from OpenSea, we hypothetically see that, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I can give you some anecdotal evidence that I've seen. So two things I noticed is I mentioned when I started the NOOBPUNKS project back beginning early middle of January. Um, the GitHub had just kind of been released by Chiru Labs, and it had zero activity on it. When I checked 3 weeks later, when I was about a week out from being ready to deploy NOOBPUNKS, I just wanted to check to see if there was any critical security issues that had been found or whatever. Checked in there, and there's like over 100 commits or pull requests on this project, and they've updated it to version 2.1. So, and they also have a project list file that they maintain in that repository, and it's got I don't know, maybe around 30 projects that have been added to it. So just in the space of 3 weeks, it's gotten a lot of attention. It has, when I checked probably a few days ago, it had 600 people who were or who had started. I'm sure that number has grown again. So a lot of people are looking at that project. A lot of people are contributing to that project, and a lot of people are deploying it. Most likely, NOOBPUNKS, since it's using a version that's only been out for 6 days, NOOBPUNKS is probably one of the first, if not the first, ERC-721a version 2.1 contracts out there. So we did get some benefits of some core library changes. And then I made sure that I did as maximally efficient of an implementation as possible on top of that. So the public mint that starts tomorrow is definitely going to be extremely gas efficient, much more so than the claiming and the pre-sale. So like that 49 for $37 in the claiming was actually hurt quite a bit by needing to do the check to see if the person actually deserved to get the claims using the Merkle tree. But for public mint, it's just going to be as clean and pure of a pass through into that brand new ERC-721a implementation as possible. So we should see some ridiculously low gas numbers starting tomorrow. So I'm super excited to see um, how that pans out. Like in my testing, which it's really hard to test gas on contracts. I have a new library that I'm using. If you're curious on if you're a Solidity developer and you want to up your gas testing game, definitely hit me up on the tech um, home or the developer home channel in the Discord, and I'll kind of share some things I learned.
That's real quick. Like that's something we don't talk about enough. Like, so two things. Like, please like, subscribe, hit the bell. Two, like, if you have a project, nftculture.com/labs, and you can pitch it to us because Mike's scaling a team of devs. We're going to try and only focus on good projects. And then three, join us in the Discord. We have, the technical side. I think Mike and some of the other devs are going to start doing AMAs and other stuff. But real quick, before you kind of go into that again, before we wrap, is like, I'm curious, the other thing that makes me excited and like the fact that like oftentimes when I want to buy a project and you're like, okay, it's 0.04, like NOOBPUNKS, but then I have to pay 0.04 in gas to buy
Mhm.
it, right? Well, now I have to list it at 0.08 to break even, and then someone
Right.
else has to pay 0.12 to buy it.
Yep.
Like this with NOOBPUNKS and like the future is like very much closer to say like, okay, cool. Like if I think the floor is strong, I can speculate on it and say, okay, maybe once again, not financial advice, do your own research, but like I can my exit and entry points are a lot easier because like let's
Hmm.
say, okay, I can now speculate more widely and more broadly to say, okay, do I buy 10 at point 0.4, and if it drops to 0.38 I exit, right? So now it's only a 5 or 10% hit, where like before you'd be, if you list it again at 0.04 it's a wash, right? You might as well harvest it, or you have to double your money to make your money back. Well, now it's like, okay, cool, like goes from 0.04 to 0.06. Now to list it's still $39. And now like I'm able to make more volume and I actually, my final thought on this is that what this does is it provides much more stability. I think we're gonna this contract type is gonna cool off this parabolic nature because like the FOMO and the FUD factors of these projects where like it has to go up because I have to pay my gas fees to transact. Like
Hmm.
now, it's the inflation through paying the gas fees cools off. So like now, I think honestly we're not gonna see as much upside. We're going to see volume plays because like now it's like, okay, I'm not going to get a 30x on the project, but if I buy 30 I could get 30 doubles because of the efficiency of the contract. I'm curious what your
Hmm.
thoughts are.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really important takeaways to what you just said. So one point is the those gas fees do go somewhere. They go to the miners, and where do they come from? They come from the original project creator and the collectors. So now basically we haven't really changed the equation too much from a total amount perspective, but we've moved it back to either the original project creator or to the collector, which is honestly the best system is one where the infrastructural piece gets their money through just sheer scale, and the creators and collectors um, are the people who are taking the lion's share of the rewards. So it got really weird in there, like with Gary V Friends is my favorite example. I was going to mint a VFriend at zero point 0.5 ETH, and I was going to have to pay zero point 0.5 ETH in gas to get it to go through. So you have a situation where the infrastructure is getting 50% of the value, which is definitely unsustainable.
Yeah,
So
it's
now,
like paying, sorry, it's like paying like let's say it costs $3 to fill your car, a gallon to fill your car up, and if you take a toll road, it costs you, $1.50 a gallon on the
Yeah.
toll road. It's crazy.
Yeah. So basically, we've just shifted the value back onto the creators and the collectors. And I think, you know, the collectors are community members, and the whole movement is about value going to the community instead of just the IP creators. So I think we've kind of restored a little bit of balance. So I think that's a really important point that you just made. And then the second piece is there's a big gripe with Ethereum and just crypto in general is that it's just not scalable. And so what we've done is we've opened up the layer one for more creative uses. Instead of it just being these kind of procedural things where we're trying to mint out nifties and just to have a plain Jane mint, you're using 95% of the network capacity. Now we're back down to using 10% of the network capacity. So once again, it's freed up space for people to do creative things. So we can now see a big innovation bubble, or innovation, not bubble, but explosion, which I think is going to be really cool. So once again, we're pushing the value to the right direction. We're incentivizing creation again, which is great. So I think this is really a sea change, and I think we're going to see the market's kind of in a weird state because of the Super Bowl hangover, just to bring it completely full circle. But I think over the next coming weeks and months, we're going to see a lot of really, really cool projects that couldn't have existed back a year ago. Like when I did the forging and the uh, all that stuff with Nifty Cult, the burn minting and the expandable contract and all that stuff. I was really pushing the limits of what you could put into a 721 back in August. And our gas was not super efficient because I prioritize coolness of feature, which is never good for gas. So gas was probably like 160K per mint, which is really terrible by our current 6 month later standard. But now that you have a really cheap cost to mint, now you can start going back to the exploring those cool ideas. Like, so somebody will come up with something really cool, I think. So that'll be neat to watch. And then my only last point, I know we need to wrap soon, is it's really cool to see like when ERC-721a came out in January or December or late December or early January, whenever Zuki was launched. I forget exactly when. It was like an amazing innovation. Like I was shocked at those gas prices. Pagsley was the same way. I was shocked about his gas prices.
I was worried when I was minting that it's like,
Yeah,
okay,
I
we're
was like,
getting rugged.
that's very suspicious, but it turned out to be legit, which is the most awesome thing ever, is when something proves to be real, even though it seems totally fake. Um, but so you were like, well, that's really the end of the line for these gas enhancements. There's no way someone else is going to find something better. But over the last only 3 to 4 weeks, people have done quite a few little revisions. Granted, we've knocked it down from like 77K gas per mint. I'm hoping in NOOBPUNKS we might get below 70 on a couple. If anybody mints a NOOBPUNK and they mint one for less than 70K gas, hit me up on that one and put it on Twitter, because that's a real milestone, and I'm really hoping we see that with this mint. But it's hard to say what'll happen. In my testing, I was able to make it happen in certain scenarios, but it's hard to say what's going to happen in the real world. So if you see less than 70K, definitely hit us up. But I'm hoping we might even get below 70K gas, which is a real achievement. But that's only with like 3 to 4 weeks of community optimization of ERC-721a. So imagine another 6 months from now where we're going to be at. Like somebody could uncover another critical bug, or maybe it's just going to be continued micro refinements. Maybe we can only get to 65K, but it's cool that we're going to really explore what that bottom limit is for doing nifties. That's my
That
that's
sounded
my
like
spiel.
a subtle shill. I was like, dang, Mike the marketer,
I know.
creating some momentum. But
In case it wasn't clear, we do get a commission on these new punk sales since I wrote the contract for it. So I'll be 100% clear about that. But
yeah, we're
even if you don't,
transparent.
yeah, even if you don't want to mint one, I don't.
Keep
I
an eye
mean,
on the
that's
contract and
yeah.
see
Keep
if it.
yeah. Watch those transactions and go check out our GitHub, which is just free source code that I'm trying to make available for the community to do cool stuff, just like the Chiru Labs guys did. And I really respect them for having built that GitHub out, because
Yeah.
it's really helped everybody.
Hell yeah. I mean, that's the stuff that gets us excited. We're going back to our roots, going back to our core, and it's been fun to work with the NOOBPUNKS team. And I'm thankful that we're doing cool stuff. We're going to keep doing cool stuff. We got some cool announcements that we can't talk about yet, which everyone knows that they're coming. And I'm rooting for NOOBPUNKS just because it is cool. There are some unique attributes. And if you have questions, if you're building your own project, hit us up in the Discord. Use our libraries, and you're going to keep innovating. We got a few devs that are coming on. Maybe we can convince them to come on screen eventually. And like one of the things that's important to me is like, how can we do more educational content? So please, like, hit us up on Twitter, hit us up in the Discord, tell us your questions that you have so that we can create educational content. If you want to pitch a project idea, go to nftculture.com/labs. And please, if this was useful for you, like, subscribe, hit the bell. It goes a long way. We've tried going in a million different directions with YouTube, and we're going to keep exploring. But the website does get over 100,000 unique viewers per month. So if you have projects you want us to feature, reach out. We'll try and feature only the best. If you have whitelists that you want to give our community access to, and your project's really special, maybe we do feature you. Maybe we bring you on stream. But we are going to be much more selective. We have, in the past 3-4 examples, taken sponsorship for a project to come on. We've refunded those projects. And our new policy is only community building moving forward. So anything else to add, Mike?
No, I think definitely check out the open source code we've released, and just some statements I'll make, and I'll probably regret making. But you mentioned the project review, but like, people hit me up all the time and ask me to help brainstorm technical problems with them. So I would consider that a unique value of our community. If you are a builder building projects and you get stumped on something, you're welcome to reach out to me, and when I have time, I'll do my best to help you brainstorm a solution. So consider that a special Nifty Cult benefit. Granted, I will answer questions whether you have a token or not. If I help you answer a question and you make a couple $1 million off of it, if you could at least pick up a token to support, then that would be great, because that benefits me and it benefits the community. So, but yeah, that's kind of a fringe benefit, is you get direct access to an experienced Solidity developer if that's something that benefits you.
I do want to make one comment, because it's a good point. It's like it's funny, and that's how fickle and cynical NFT world is. It's like there have been projects where, like, people I love and I've gotten to know them in Discord, and they've made 10 ETH on like Anonymize or like something, and then, like, candidly, we have a lot of alpha, and alpha's not the focus, but we do have the wallet peeping, like a lot of the features, the daily drops, etc. And so, like, people have made a bunch of money, and then they, like, upgrade their token to like a 6 ETH whale community, and then not only do they stop coming to our community, but then they sell our token. I'm like, we made you so much money, like, you can just hold the token. Like, it's like, like, it becomes it's a rounding error. So we're working hard for everyone, and I actually do want to give a quick shout out, because Steph shows up all the time for our content, and he's provocative, not safe for work. If you're on a work computer, don't go to twitter.com. I added the question mark at the end, but make sure this is a great photographer. It's definitely provocative, not safe for work, but awesome work, and just getting to know so many people in the community. Go check it out. And I'm thankful, man. I like this reset. I like that we're helping some projects grow. I'm looking forward to this year, and I can't wait. Hopefully we can make some of those announcements soon. And thank you.
Oh, no problem. Hey, man, it's always awesome working with you, and we both love doing stuff for the community members. I think we're both probably in it for the relationships and um, feeling like we're doing something good for everybody more so than the money. So that's where I feel like we've achieved a lot, and I feel like what the reach we're going to get this year is going to be even more so. So yeah, I'm super excited about 2022.
Hell yes. And if you're an artist, hit us up. We're still focusing on the art.
That's
Everyone
true.
take care. Bye.